What if there were a bridge so high that standing at the bottom and looking up, you would see cars gliding through clouds? What if building that bridge required slicing an entire mountain cleanly in half? And what if, in the end, the bridge itself was not even the real point of the story? This is the story of the highest bridge on Earth, a structure so extreme it sounds fictional at first glance, and the deeper reason why China was willing to spend around $300 million to make it real. To understand why this bridge exists, you have to travel to Guizhou province in southwestern China. The people who live here have repeated the same saying for generations: no 3 feet of level ground. This is not poetry or exaggeration. It is a literal description of their daily reality. More than 90% of Guizhou is covered by mountains and hills. Flat land is rare, straight roads are almost non-existent, and moving from one place to another has historically meant winding paths that cling to cliffs and snake endlessly around ridges. From the air, the province looks as if the earth itself was crumpled like a sheet of paper and never smoothed back out. The landscape is dramatic and breathtaking. Steep peaks rise suddenly from deep valleys, rivers cut narrow canyons through solid rock, and clouds often hang low between mountain ridges. Visitors often call Guizhou the Switzerland of China because of its beauty, its ethnic diversity, and its striking scenery. But that comparison hides a harsher truth. For the people who lived here for centuries, the mountains were not a postcard backdrop. They were a prison. Isolation defined life in Guizhou. Villages that looked close enough to reach by foot were separated by ravines and cliffs that turned a short distance into hours of dangerous travel. Roads twisted endlessly, hugging mountainsides with sheer drops just beyond the guardrails. Bringing supplies into remote areas was slow and expensive. Getting goods out to sell in larger markets was even harder. Crops often spoiled before they could reach buyers. Families were divided by geography. Children in one valley could not realistically attend better schools in another. Economic opportunities that existed only a few kilometers away might as well have been on another continent. Over generations, geography reinforced poverty. The mountains limited trade, slowed education, and isolated entire communities from the rapid development happening elsewhere in China. When the central government looked at Guizhou, it did not just see dramatic scenery. It saw millions of people trapped by terrain. And eventually, it made a decision that would permanently change the province. The solution was infrastructure on a scale few countries have ever attempted. In Guizhou alone, China has built more than 32,000 bridges. That number is not a typo. 32,000 bridges in a single province. These are not small, rural footbridges crossing streams. Many of them are massive structures spanning deep valleys and wide canyons, designed to allow roads and highways to cut directly across terrain that once forced hours-long detours. The idea was simple in theory. Stop going around mountains and start going over them. Among those tens of thousands of bridges, one stands higher than all the rest. The Huajiang Bridge rises above Huajiang Canyon, its roadway suspended an astonishing 625 meters above the canyon floor. From below, the bridge seems to float in the sky. On some days, clouds drift beneath passing vehicles, making the structure look less like a piece of infrastructure and more like a surreal illusion. To reach that height, you would need to climb to the top of the tallest skyscrapers in China. Here, that height is simply where the road is. The bridge stretches nearly 2,900 meters from one side of the canyon to the other, with a main span of about 1,420 meters hanging freely between its towers. Before it existed, crossing this canyon required roughly 2 hours of exhausting mountain driving along narrow, twisting roads. After the bridge opened, the same journey takes about 2 minutes. 2 hours became 2 minutes. Entire towns were suddenly brought within easy reach of one another. But the bridge is only part of the story. To truly grasp how far China was willing to go, you have to look at the highway it serves. Huajiang Bridge is a critical piece of the Guizhou S57 Expressway, a 150-kilometer route cutting through some of the most challenging terrain on the planet. In many places, the highway does not bend politely around obstacles. It goes straight through them. At one point along the route, a massive mountain stood directly in the way. Going around it would have added dozens of kilometers of detours, tunnels, and switchbacks. Instead, engineers made a more radical choice. They split the mountain in half. Using explosives, drilling machines, and months of precision blasting, they carved a V-shaped gap straight through solid rock. What had taken millions of years to form was cut open in a matter of months. The scale of that operation is difficult to fully imagine. The volume of rock removed could fill thousands of Olympic-sized swimming pools. Blasts shook nearby villages. Engineers had to ensure that the remaining rock faces were stable and would not collapse onto the new roadway. When the work was finished, the expressway ran cleanly through the mountain, connecting districts that had once been effectively isolated from each other. And at the end of this dramatic corridor of engineering, vehicles emerge onto a bridge hanging hundreds of meters above the ground. Building the Huajiang Bridge itself pushed engineering to its limits. Before construction even began, teams studied the canyon for kilometers upstream and downstream. They needed to find rock strong enough to anchor towers weighing tens of thousands of tons. They had to account for canyon walls sloping at different angles, uneven geology, seismic risks, and unpredictable wind behavior. Every variable mattered at this scale. The final design called for a steel truss suspension bridge nearly 3 kilometers long. Its steel framework consists of 93 massive truss sections, with a combined weight of around 22,000 tons. For comparison, the Eiffel Tower weighs about 7,300 tons. This bridge contains roughly 3 times as much steel, and all of it had to be assembled while suspended more than 600 meters above a rocky canyon floor. Traditional cranes were useless at this height. Even the largest crane in the world, standing around 250 meters tall, would reach less than halfway up the canyon. Instead, engineers relied on a cable crane system. Thick steel cables were stretched across the canyon, forming an aerial runway. Motorized trolleys ran along these cables, carrying multi-ton steel sections through open air to their precise installation points. Each piece had to be placed with extreme accuracy, because a mistake at this height could be catastrophic. Construction began from the center of the span and progressed outward toward both sides simultaneously. This method kept the structure balanced as it grew. To achieve the required precision, workers used China's Beidou satellite navigation system, ensuring every component was positioned exactly as planned. Long before any steel was lifted, engineers had already built the bridge virtually. Using advanced computer simulations, they performed a digital pre-assembly, running through the entire construction process step by step. Every bolt, weld, and connection was planned in advance. When real construction started, workers were following a carefully rehearsed script. Nature, however, does not care about scripts. The canyon's uneven terrain meant the bridge's support towers could not be identical. The North Tower rises about 262 meters, while the South Tower stands around 205 meters. The cables anchor deep into the mountainsides at different depths and angles because the rock formations are asymmetrical. And Guizhou is not geologically quiet. Earthquakes are a real risk. A suspension bridge behaves like a giant pendulum. When the ground moves, the deck wants to swing. To manage this, engineers installed massive shock absorbers at both ends of the bridge to dissipate energy and control movement during seismic events. Wind posed another serious challenge. In a narrow canyon, wind accelerates as it is squeezed between rock walls, a phenomenon known as the Venturi effect. Gusts in Huajiang Canyon can reach speeds comparable to high-speed trains. To understand these forces, engineers tested scale models in wind tunnels. They also deployed Doppler LiDAR systems in the canyon. These systems shoot laser beams into the air and measure how they scatter off tiny particles of moisture, creating a three-dimensional, real-time map of wind behavior. This data allowed engineers to design the bridge to withstand the specific wind patterns of the canyon, not just theoretical averages. Even after completion, the bridge is constantly monitored. Fiber optic sensors are embedded directly into the cables. As the steel stretches under load, the fibers stretch with it. By sending light through the fibers and analyzing reflections, engineers can measure strain in real time, 24 hours a day. The bridge is not just a structure, it is a continuously observed system. All of this effort raises an obvious question. Why spend so much money and effort on a single bridge? The answer goes beyond transportation. Since 2012, China has invested hundreds of billions of dollars in infrastructure across its poorest and most isolated regions. Guizhou was once among the poorest provinces in the country. Today, it is connected by expressways, high-speed rail, and even an international airport. These projects are part of what the government calls its war on poverty, an attempt to remove geographic barriers to economic participation. But Guizhou also plays a role in a much larger vision. It sits within the broader framework of China's Belt and Road Initiative, a strategy aimed at building economic corridors and demonstrating China's development model to the world. Infrastructure is both a practical tool and a political statement. That brings us to the bridge's other, less obvious purpose. Huajiang Bridge is not just infrastructure for locals. It is designed to be a destination. China wants it to attract tourists from around the world. One of the bridge's towers contains an 800-meter-tall glass elevator that carries visitors to a two-story cafe suspended high above the canyon. Beneath the roadway, a glass walkway allows visitors to look straight down to the canyon floor, more than half a kilometer below. There are even plans and installations for artificial waterfalls cascading across parts of the structure. The vision goes further. The bridge already hosts bungee jumping, and plans have been discussed for base jumping events and extreme sports competitions. The canyon below could become a hub for adventure tourism, turning a former barrier into an economic engine. In the end, Huajiang Bridge is more than a record-breaking structure. It is a symbol. It shows what happens when a government decides that geography will not be allowed to dictate destiny. A mountain was split. A canyon was crossed. Travel times collapsed from hours to minutes. Poverty was attacked not with slogans, but with steel, concrete, and explosives. China did not just build the highest bridge on Earth. It built a message. Infrastructure is no longer just about moving people from point A to point B. It is about reshaping regions, attracting global attention, and proving what is possible. The bridge hangs in the clouds, but its impact is firmly grounded on the lives of the people below.